So, one, I'm going to read a particular message that I got from an organization called Push Black. He's an activist, and it's three, or I believe four actually, might be four or three. And it just speaks on the myths that a lot of white people tell about race, about slavery. Okay, so this is just going to be debunking that.
All right.
All right, so this is from his words, not mine. This is from him. Racists love to tell lies about slavery and to downplay its harsh brutality, feel less guilty, and deny its continued impact on our lives. We've previously gone over the top three slavery lies. Here are four more dangerous lies that keep getting told about slavery. Number one, few whites actually owned enslaved Africans. The truth, nearly a third of white families owned enslaved Africans. A third. More importantly, though, the entire society was built around slavery. This is speaking to America. Meaning all whites benefited from it. So even if, per se, for anyone's like, well, my ancestors didn't own any, doesn't matter, you still benefited from that slave labor. Okay? Number two, black people willingly fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War. That's lie number two. The truth, people use this lie to argue that many enslaved people were happy and loyal. The truth is, enslaved people were forced to cook and clean for Confederate soldiers. If no one knows who the Confederate soldiers are, or the history of Civil War, or the history of the Confederacy, do your research. All right, so were forced to cook and clean for Confederate soldiers, but they weren't soldiers, and it definitely wasn't willing. All right. So let's see here. Lie number three, house slaves had it much better than field slaves. Right. So many of you have probably heard the term house Negro, field Negro. Right. So I'll speak a little bit to that and how he elaborates on this. Most of the house slaves were women who faced constant brutality, including frequent rape, both from mistresses and the masters. They were nearer than those in the fields, meaning mistreatment was often more consistent. Rape of house slaves, or house Negroes, was so common that black Americans today have an average of 16.7% white DNA. That is against our will to have that DNA. So really think about that for a second, right? Like I don't know personally if I have white in my DNA. I probably do, because of what slave ancestors did to my ancestors, what slave owners did to my ancestors. But thinking about that unwillingly force of action and rape to then implement themselves into our legacy, to furthermore keep their legacy present. That was against our will, right? So we automatically have white DNA in us without our consent. So just let that simmer. All right, the last lie is enslaved people were timid, docile, and or loyal. This is part of the happy, content slave myth. It's connected to stereotypes that black people thrive under tight control and with simple, basic physical tasks because of our lack of intelligence. The truth is that we consistently fought back from ship revolts before even reaching the Americas to thousands of rebellions over the centuries. If you study the Atlantic slave trade, you'll actually notice a lot of those ships did not make it to the Americas because we actually fought back on the ships before it got to the Americas, right? So the Americas being South America, North America, right? So a lot of us actually protested back then before they could even get to the lands in the first place. So do not get this mixed up. All right, so that was from Push Black. If anyone is on Facebook and they want to stay educated, this is a man who has dedicated his life to this. His name is Darrell, the founder of Push Black, and just look up Push Black on Facebook. They might even be on IG as well. And what he does is he sends you tons of references in your DM the moment that you start acknowledging what he's doing. I think it's kind of like automated. So it's basically just you get the knowledge once you acknowledge what he's doing. And that's it. Push Black, correct. Yep, push black. So the next thing I want to say is, since I kind of touched on protesting, this is a particular take from Trevor Noah in his mind and what he's speaking to protesting. A lot of you, I'm sure, follow Trevor Noah. If you don't know who he is, look him up. He's from South Africa. He's been through apartheid, and he speaks a lot to colorism and even racism inside of South Africa as well. So what he says is, because I know there's a lot of people who try to take light away from the protests. When Colin Kaepernick knelt, they said this is not the right way to protest. When MLK marched in Selma, they said this is not the right way to protest. Mm-hmm. When people marched in the streets of South Africa during apartheid, they said this is not the right way to protest. There is no right way to protest because that's what protest is. It can't be considered right by the system that is protesting. I'm going to read that last bit again. There is no right way to protest because that's what a protest is. It can't be considered right by the system that it's protesting. Okay? So, if anybody on this chat, I'm glad that you've disabled the comments, but if anyone is on this chat who is black, has to deal with any type of white fragility, or any type of gaslighting. If you don't know what gaslighting is, look that up, research it. Or anybody who is opposed to these protests, they are not for your life. They are not for the betterment of human condition. They are not for the betterment of actual humanity. What they are for is upholding their whiteness and upholding their white supremacy at all means and by all means. Do not engage with these people in the comments. They do not care about what you have to say. All they care about is the betterment of their people as white passing, or anti-blackness, which is another form of white supremacy. Let's keep that in mind.
Yes, you did.
Yes, absolutely.
So with that being said, how easy, because I also want to provide context for the people that's watching too. You spoke to something right now about white fragility, but then also being passive, and that being a move to uphold whiteness, and also acts of like white supremacy and stuff like that. How easy is it to slip into that mindset without knowing that you did? You know what I mean? Without, because I feel like a lot of the times what happens is it unfortunately it's not an active thing of like,
right.
Like I'm telling you this because I'd rather uphold this. I feel like
right.
Don't know. You know what I'm saying? They don't know that those actions continue to strengthen the foundation of what you were just talking about right there.
Very good question. So basically, what white fragility is, it is a coping mechanism. It's a coping mechanism that is embedded into pretty much everyone who is white. So if you've ever heard Jane Elliott, who's a white activist and ally, ever say all white people are racist, she's speaking to the condition, and that inherently white people are racist. Now, it's not to say that if you take them outside of like when they're a baby and you put them into pretty much just like a black household or anything else, it's not to say they're going to grow up and now be racist. No. But what it says is, on a sociological level, is that conditionally all white people benefit from white privilege. All white people benefit from slavery, right? And the remnants of slavery and what that has done, and how many times that black people has built America on their backs without getting anything inside of reparations or racial equity. So to say that when white fragility comes up, it is a defense mechanism to disarm people of color, and primarily black people as well, to then be seen as taking responsibility for self. Okay, so Weeze says it really, really great, and I mentioned Weeze to you. If no one knows who that is, just go to Instagram. Just look up on your Instagram, according to Weeze, Weeze. She's a great activist inside of anti-racism, woman of color. Please follow her and donate to her. I see her as my mentor and my sis, so please donate to her. But anyway, as she sees it, is whiteness cannot exist without black people. White supremacy cannot exist without blackness, because this is where it started. This is ground zero of racism. right? Not to say that racism isn't a global thing, because it is, right? Trevor Noah even said it too. Europe is the OG of racism. That was from Trevor Noah, right? But it's basically, if you think about the analogy of, America sleeping in the exact same bed that they shit in, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
look at Canada, it didn't start there. If you look at Europe, it didn't start there. They left from there to go pick up and enslave our ancestors and then brought them to South America, to the Americas, right? North America. And then a lot of what happened in Canada was that during the Great Migration, a lot of us fled. A lot of my ancestors fled. A lot of my people, our people, fled to Canada to get better treatment because what was happening here was diabolical, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you ever study the Great Migration, right, a lot of people will try to make it very light and say like, oh, that was because black people, we as the black diaspora wanted to go and find better opportunities in the north from the south. No.
So, most of us, we remember Stephen Twitch Boss, who was the amiable DJ for Ellen DeGeneres' show. The legend and a man of people died 13th of December 2022 at the age of 40 years. The cause of death was known to be suicide in his apartment. But the most surprising part about his death is that no drugs or alcohol was found in his body system and no conditions were actually listed in the report. At the time of his death, his dear sweet wife released a statement to CNN that it is with the heaviest of hearts that I have to share my husband Stephen has left us, Holker Boss said in the statement. Stephen lit up every room he stepped into. He valued family, friends, and community above all else, and leading with love and light was everything to him. He was the backbone of our family, the best husband and father, and an inspiration to his fans. But not to forget, by the time Stephen died, in an interview, the wife said that earlier she actually wasn't understanding her husband, like he had changed as if something wrong was going on in his life, that he wasn't in posture to share to other people plus his family. The wife also went on and said that Stephen brought joy and smiles on people's faces, so she suggested that he should be remembered as a beautiful man. So about the video you have watched, it was Stephen Twitch Boss having a wide conversation about the evil of racism, anti-racism, microaggression, and dismantling the white supremacy and actions to take to solve all this. He had this discussion with Jade Zuberi, and this all happened on 1st January 2020 live on his Instagram. And for the full video, you're free to visit Stephen Twitch official Instagram page. All what I will say is that continue resting in peace, Stephen Twitch Boss.